don't be shy about asking for support and giving the committee the answers to the questions we ask. I'm sorry, will you identify yourself, please?
Good morning, Jeff Bonvecchio. I'm the Director of Capital Projects.
Sorry, your last name?
Bonvecchio.
Bonvecchio, okay. Mr. Bonvecchio, how much have we expended so far on this exercise? It does seem like we've been planning the renovation of this library for a number of years. And so we have been expending funds on a rolling basis. And it'd be nice to know just how much we've expended, and then to learn that we have what is a pretty substantial additional resource to continue the planning process. We almost could have built a library based on what we've expended, I'm guessing, thus far.
We had this, the process actually goes back to earlier, as far back as 2001 with some initial studies, then again in 2005 or 2006. We picked it up again in 2011 with working with the Urban Land Institute.
Mr. Bonvecchio, if you could just give me a number of how much we've expended up until now on planning this branch, it would be helpful.
We do have a detailed breakout in our response to questions, but it's right around as of March 18th, it looks like we spent upwards of close to $1 million and a half on the planning effort.
Since 2001?
No, that's probably since 2011. We don't have a record of what we spent since 2001.
So, Mr. Bonvecchio, where is the budget for $20 million to do design work? I appreciate that if and when the time comes in the future, you will need temporary space to move the library, and that there will be expense associated with that. But you're not doing that next year, are you?
It'll be the planning process for that next year, and also, I mean, a big part of that process will be once the space is identified for interim services, or how much space is needed for interim services, then finding that space within the downtown area.
I understand that, Mr. Bonvecchio, but you're not going to be doing that in 2015. You may be planning and identifying it, but you're not going to be leasing that space in 2015. Correct?
Correct.
All right. And so here's my question. I don't want anyone to believe or read into this a diminished enthusiasm for the new library. It's a matter of how we spend our money and where we park it. I don't believe that you're going to spend anywhere near $20 million on design development in 2015. I think that is probably, it's an inconceivable number. And so I want to juxtapose that, with the idea that we are actually pushing back by 4 years the rebuilding of the Palisades library itself. And so if we're parking $20 million that we know we're not going to spend, while at the same time postponing for 4 years a long-promised Palisades renovation, I want to ask, why can't we get a detailed budget of precisely what is needed for the planning process to not diminish or delay the flagship, and how much would be left over to begin or, in fact, work on the Palisades Library and to keep that on track? And that's a question that, if you feel comfortable answering, fine. Mr. Bonvecchio, if you can tell me why perhaps we couldn't do that, or if you want to leave that to Mr. Reyes-Galvilon.
I think it's a good question. We are looking into all those aspects and what costs we do look to expend in fiscal year 15, and I think we should be able to get a very detailed estimate. We're currently, I think it's around 13.5 if we proceed directly straight through with the design process.
For what? For MLK or for?
For MLK, yes.
You would need $13 million next year.
If the design process moves forward, yes.
All right. So, but let's again appreciate that sometimes things aren't always on the track that we want, that we have ambitious timelines. And again, this isn't intended to slow down the library, but if the library itself, the funds for the library construction itself are not going to be available till 2019, might we not be able to fund this kind of work between now and then and free up some of the $20 million to keep the promise to the Palisades community for their $21.7 million library? Or differently, money can move from one fiscal year to the next. So we've done this in the capital improvement plan as it relates to schools, where where the community doesn't see anything less. They see what was promised to them, but by shifting dollars around, we can actually accomplish more and keep our promises across the board. So I guess what I'm asking, and I appreciate, Mr. Reyes-Gavilan, this is a case of first impression. Would you, are you open to working with the committee staff to make sure that you have everything you need for the planning of Martin Luther King, and at the same time, perhaps keeping the promise for Palisades?
Absolutely. I'm sorry, thank you. Absolutely, Council Member.
Good.
And just one point, I think part of that $13 million was not for planning, but also some exterior improvements to the building that would be needed regardless, and what we would think wouldn't be interrupted by the actual construction of the new space.
Okay.
And that, I think, is probably the bulk of what we were talking about spending, and apologies that I don't have a specific detailed budget of those exterior improvements with us.
Well, you know, right, so if it's 13 or so for that, and $1.5 million or $2 million for planning, you know, believe it or not, you can stitch together $5 or $6 million here and $5 or $6 million there, and next thing you know, you've got a new palace.
Happy to